It was just after midnight when the crackling sound of fire pierced through the silence of the night. Snap, hiss, pop. I shot up from my bed, heart pounding in my chest. The room flickered with an eerie orange glow. A thick, acrid smell of smoke crept in through the slightly open window. I jumped out of bed, rushed to the front window. And that's when I saw it, my patrol vehicle. My official police cruiser, engulfed in flames at the edge of my driveway. The fire danced violently, casting ghostly shadows across the front yard. The hood had already melted. The windshield spiderwebbed and blackened. The blue and white paint blistered and peeled like scorched skin. No, 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 I shouted, flinging open the front door and sprinting outside barefoot. The cold concrete doing little to cool the firestorm inside me. As I ran toward the inferno, I noticed figures standing across the street. 4 of them, laughing, holding drinks, like they were enjoying a neighborhood barbecue instead of watching a police car go up in flames. The HOA board. And there she was, Karen Pennington, the president of the Homeowners Association. Blonde bob, pearls gleaming in the firelight, arms folded across her smug little cardigan. Her voice cut through the night, sharp and syrupy. Well, she sneered. Maybe next time you'll think twice before disrespecting community regulations. Officer, I froze. Are you insane? That's a government vehicle. Arson is a federal crime. She chuckled, raising her glass in a mock toast. And yet, here it is, burning. Maybe your presence has been the real violation all along. You know, parking that I saw outside your house every night. It ruins the aesthetic. My fists clenched. You're celebrating this? You think this is some kind of joke? A man beside her, Greg Turner, HOA treasurer, took a sip from his tumbler and said, "Should have kept your car in the garage like the rest of us. Rules are rules." I stepped toward them. "You recorded this, didn't you? Go ahead. Laugh now. When the fire department and investigators get here, we'll see how funny you find felony charges." Karen's expression darkened. "Careful, officer. Threats don't look good on public servants. Maybe this is a sign you're not a good fit for our neighborhood." Just then, another bop from the car snapped my attention back to the blaze. The gas tank hadn't gone yet. I backed away instinctively. Neighbors had started peeking out their windows. Some came outside, phones in hand, whispering. Someone finally called 911. But in that moment, surrounded by smoke, laughter, and the stench of burnt rubber, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't an accident. This was war. A few days before my cruiser turned into a bonfire, it all started with a letter neatly tucked into my mailbox, printed on thick ivory paper, sealed with the HOA's emblem like it came from royalty. I unfolded it slowly, already expecting nonsense, and I wasn't disappointed. "Dear resident, as a homeowner in the Creststone Meadows community, you are strongly encouraged to join our Homeowners Association. Participation ensures harmony, aesthetics, and mutual respect among neighbors. Non-compliance may result in increased scrutiny and enforcement actions as defined by our board." Encouraged? Huh? That was their way of saying do it. Or else. I crumpled it and tossed it in the trash. I never signed any agreement with the HOA when I moved in. This street was outside their jurisdiction. I checked before I bought the house. But clearly, Karen Pennington and her crew didn't like being told no. The next morning, it began. A neon orange citation flapped on my door: violation, grass exceeds allowable height by 0.5 inches. Fine, $50. I laughed. The lawn was freshly mowed. I even double-checked with a ruler. Day 2? Another slip: improper parking, front tires not aligned with the curb. Fine, $75. Seriously? Then came the bold one: unauthorized vehicle, marked law enforcement units are not in compliance with HOA visual standards. Fine, $100 per day. I stood there on my porch, jaw tight, staring at the ticket stuck to my patrol car's windshield like it was a criminal itself. That night, I knocked on Karen's door. She opened it slowly, holding a glass of red wine. Her face stretched into that smug smile I was starting to hate. "Officer," she said sweetly, "what brings you by? A neighborhood wellness check? You've got no authority over my property," I snapped. "I'm not part of your HOA." "Oh. But that's where you're wrong." She leaned against the doorframe. "You see, we're expanding our jurisdiction. Informally. Of course. Most residents see the benefit in unity. You'd do well to consider that." I narrowed my eyes. "Is that a threat?" She raised an eyebrow. "Just neighborly advice. No one likes an outsider who thinks the rules don't apply." I walked away. I didn't need this. But the next morning, another citation was waiting. And the next. And the next. They were relentless. Fines for garden hose placement. For trash cans not brought in fast enough. For a porch light that was too bright. It was a game to them. And I wasn't playing. I refused to pay. I ignored every bogus notice. But it didn't matter. Their harassment escalated like clockwork. They weren't just trying to force me into the HOA. They were trying to break me. And deep down, I knew something bigger was coming. The day after the fire, while the charred remains of my cruiser were still smoldering in the driveway, I reviewed the footage from my security cameras. I had 6 of them, motion activated, night vision, 4K clarity, mounted discreetly along the perimeter of my property. I installed them the day after the first ridiculous fine. My instincts had been screaming that something worse was coming. I was right. At exactly 12:17 a.m., the cameras caught movement. 3 figures slipped through the side of my yard, using flashlights with red lenses to avoid detection. Their faces were obscured, until one of them looked directly into the camera by accident. Greg Turner, the HOA treasurer. They crouched around my patrol vehicle like hyenas around a kill. One held a red gas can. Another had gloves and a lighter. I watched, jaw tightening, as they soaked the vehicle, laughing and whispering like teenagers pulling a prank. And then, whoosh, a wall of fire erupted. And they ran, ducking behind hedges and sprinting back across the street. I paused the video, rewound it, watched again. It was them. No doubt. Arson. Premeditated. malicious. And the fools had no idea whose toes they were stepping on. They thought I was just a beat cop. Just another uniform. But what they didn't know is that I'm the chief of police. I don't just enforce the law, I command the people who do. With one phone call, I could have a full investigative team on this case. I could freeze their assets, pull their records, dig into every shady HOA meeting they've ever held. But I wasn't ready to make that call just yet. Not before I made one thing absolutely clear. I see you. That evening, as I walked to my mailbox, Karen was out watering her perfectly trimmed roses. She saw me and smiled, like nothing had happened. Rough night? She called out sweetly. I smiled back. Oh, not at all. I actually slept very well. You know, with all the footage my security system captured, I felt surprisingly safe. Her smile faltered. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. You might want to tell Greg to invest in a ski mask next time. That close-up of his face, not a great look under firelight. Her face drained of color. I kept walking. Calm. Measured. In control. Because the game had changed. They thought I was powerless. But now, the hunter knows the names of the wolves. And it's only a matter of time before they feel what it's like to be hunted. The next morning, I walked into the Creststone Meadows clubhouse like a storm in uniform. The monthly HOA meeting was already underway. Folding chairs in neat rows. Cheap coffee. A projector set up for Karen's usual slideshow on shrub maintenance and acceptable color palettes for front doors. Karen Pennington stood at the podium in a navy blazer and pearls, presiding over the room like she was the queen of suburbia. Her board members flanked her, smug as ever, Greg Turner, Cynthia Barnes, and Wallace Gray. About 20 other residents sat scattered in the audience, most of them bored and half listening. Until I stepped in, the room fell quiet. You could hear the creak of the floor beneath my boots. Good morning, I said, loud and clear. I'd like to request a few minutes of the board's time. Karen rolled her eyes. Officer, if this is about last night's unfortunate, I raised a remote and cut her off. The projector behind her flickered, and then the footage began to play. Night vision. Red lights. The unmistakable image of Greg Turner sloshing gasoline over my patrol car. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The video continued, Cynthia lighting the match, Wallace acting as lookout. Karen's voice heard faintly in the background, make it quick. I let the footage run in full. When it ended, the silence was heavier than steel. Karen's face went white. Her lips parted. But no words came out. Greg stumbled back a step. This isn't what it looks like. It looks like arson, I said coldly. Of state property. A marked police vehicle. I stepped forward, my voice firm and unshakable. Let me remind this board and all residents present, destroying government property, especially a law enforcement vehicle, is not just vandalism. It's a federal offense. And guess what? I reached into my jacket and pulled out my badge, holding it high. I'm not just a patrol officer. I'm Chief Daniel Rourke. And you just declared war on the wrong person. Karen's jaw dropped. You tricked us. No, I replied. You exposed yourselves. Right on cue. The doors to the clubhouse burst open. 3 uniformed officers entered, led by Captain Morales, my second in command. By order of the state, Morales announced, Karen Pennington, Greg Turner, Cynthia Barnes, and Wallace Gray, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit arson, destruction of state property, and obstruction of justice. What? Karen shrieked, her voice echoing off the walls. You can't do this. I'm the HOA president. You were, I said coolly, as officers cuffed her. One of the board members, Wallace, wobbled on his feet and collapsed, fainting with a heavy thud onto the carpet. A resident in the back clapped. Then another. And another. Within seconds, the room erupted in applause as the HOA tyrants were led out in handcuffs. Justice had finally arrived in Creststone Meadows. And I wasn't done yet. The news of the arrests spread like wildfire. Within 24 hours, the entire town was buzzing. Local headlines called it the suburban scandal of the year. Karen Pennington, Greg Turner, and the rest of the corrupt HOA board were each charged, tried, and convicted. Arson, conspiracy, misuse of authority, it stacked up fast. 2 were sentenced to prison. The others got hefty fines, probation, and permanent bans from serving on any residential boards. But the biggest change came not from the courtroom, but from the neighborhood itself. With its leadership dismantled, the HOA was officially dissolved. Residents petitioned to shut it down, and this time, they had proof, unity, and one hell of a reason. The bylaws were struck down. The HOA office building, once a symbol of control, pettiness, and fear, was bulldozed to the ground. In its place, a community park, lush grass, fresh picnic tables, a playground for the kids, and a stone grill station built right where Karen's office used to sit. Like poetic justice written in brick and charcoal. I organized the first big barbecue myself. Flyers went out to every house. No dress code. No inspection. Just good people, good food, and 0 fines for mismatched patio furniture. On the day of the event, the air was filled with laughter. The scent of burgers and ribs sizzling, and the sound of music echoing off newly painted fences, any color the owners wanted. Kids ran barefoot through sprinklers. Elderly neighbors danced under string lights. And right at the center of it all, next to the smoker, I hammered a wooden sign into the grass. Welcome to Freedom Park. No HOA zone. People cheered when they saw it. Some even cried. We weren't just neighbors anymore, we were a community. Free from Karen's tyranny. Free to live like human beings again. One woman came up to me with tears in her eyes. Chief Rourke, she said. Thank you. You didn't just save your own house. You saved all of ours. I smiled. It wasn't just me. It was all of us. We took back what was ours. That night, as the fire pit glowed and laughter carried across the lawn, I leaned back in my chair, plate in hand, heart full. I knew the battle was over. And I knew, beyond any doubt, that we had won.